I don't want them in the room.
Hi, everybody. Just want you to know we're just like setting up the PowerPoint. So it'll just be a minute and then we'll get started.
No worry.
Now we're.
We never had that kind of.
You need me to call you?
All right, I'm ready whenever you are.
So we're all set now?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's not recording. Yeah. All right, so hi, everyone, and welcome to the, well, aren't you supposed to say that?
No, we don't have to say all that.
Okay, all right, so.
And as a reminder, we have a few people participating online and via mic, so we'll need to make sure we speak up so they can hear us
All right.
clearly.
So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town of Berlin Planning and Zoning, of the Plan of Conservation Development Committee. And we have present at the committee Peter Zaragoza and Diane Jorsey, my left, Sandy Polo, and Timothy Sigma, and our hostess with the mostest would be Maureen Justy. But we also have a guest, and that is Francesco from FH Services.
Studio.
Studio. Okay.
You got it.
All
You
right.
got it.
Terrific. Thank you. All right. And also online is Stephen Biella Jr., who's with the commission. And we also have Jim Mahoney. Hello, happy Thanksgiving. And I guess the regular people joining us are citizens as well. All right.
Let me just check for others.
Try and see if there's anyone else.
And also joining us is Anthony Zemba from FHI Studio. Anthony is a natural resource expert. We'll be talking this evening about the natural resources we have here.
All right, well, that's a good thing. I like to talk about our natural resources. All righty, so I guess we'll call the meeting to order, and it's about 6:12. All righty. So next we have the review conservation, open space, and recreation resources. I guess that would be the first item on our agenda. All right, so.
Okay, so I'm going to close this door to minimize any sound distractions.
Don't close it tight because we are an open meeting, so
Oh,
just
okay,
close
yeah.
it that
How's
far.
that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
It's an open meeting, so
Gotcha.
we have to be.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. We're going to get started this evening. As mentioned before, we will be covering open space, natural resources, and recreation as well this evening, since it's related to your parks, which are part of your open space system. And I am going to maximize my screen, and I'm sharing my screen. I think you can all see it online as well as we can see it here. And Anthony, can you speak up just for a second to make sure we can hear you when it's time for you to talk?
Sure, yeah. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes,
Loud and clear.
excellent, thank you.
Very good, thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right. Just taking care of a couple technical things here, and we'll jump right into our agenda. So first, as I mentioned, we'll talk about conservation, open space, recreation resources. And we'll give you a presentation of our findings to date. And a lot of that's based on mapping the resources and doing inventory of resources. And then we want to jump into a discussion about ideas. What can we do to manage these resources? And I think that'll be the most productive part of our meeting this evening. And then we'll close things out by reviewing, briefly discussing the draft online survey. And I hope you've all had a chance to take a look at it, maybe take it. And then circle back to our vision statement, which is ongoing, and talk about our next steps. Okay, our project schedule, there we are. We're still at the beginning of this phase, but at the same time, we're well into it. We have not yet launched our community engagement, but the survey will be a very important part of that. And we are well underway with existing positions and getting to know the community and gathering up all kinds of information. Related to this process is the affordable housing plan, which is taking shape. Hope to have a committee established in December. We'll start meeting with them, and that process will run parallel to our process. All right. But this evening we're going to talk about environmental open space resources, and those resources are comprised of a number of features throughout the town. And that includes, I think, all of which probably makes a lot of sense to you. It includes wetlands, groundwater, habitat for various species, floodplains, streams, rivers, lakes, open space, whether it be passive open space or more active open space, all of it contributes to protecting natural resources and providing habitat for animals and species that make a home in the world. And managing all these resources are a number of different commissions, departments, and separate organizations, such as the Berlin Land Trust. So on the commission side, you have the Conservation Commission, most obviously. You have this commission, Parks and Recreation, Inland, Wetlands, and Water Courses. All these commissions are very engaged in stewardship of the town's natural resources. And then on the town side, you have a few departments that are really directly connected to managing these resources. Planning and zoning, DPW, and Parks and Rec, which isn't to say there aren't other departments involved in managing the town's open space. Those are the three that are most engaged. And on the private side, it's the Berlin Land Trust, which holds a number of properties here in Berlin. And it's a really important entity with respect to protecting, preserving, conserving land here in town. Now, I want to revisit a map that we presented last month, and that's the land cover map, because this tells us exactly how land is used on almost a square foot basis throughout the town. And as a reminder, much of Berlin's land cover, even though you're a fairly well built out community, remains open space or natural in a natural state, whether it be deciduous or coniferous forest or turf grass areas. The red areas you see are the developed areas on the map, and the yellow areas are the turf grass areas. So they can be open space, but they're non-forested. And that really constitutes what we have to work with when we talk about natural resources here. And of course, those natural resources vary quite a bit by function and value across the town. And once did some numbers on that. We looked at these numbers last month, but your forest areas cover a significant share of the town's land. The biggest land cover in town is deciduous forest. That's the middle part. Now, how does all that map out with respect to the parcels? The parcels being each piece of property that has discrete ownership. Well, when we take a look at public and open space parcels, what we see is much of the town is covered by some fairly sizable open space parcels that are either private or in many cases owned by the town, and in some cases by the state. So this open space is comprised of town-owned parcels, town-owned parks in open space, Berlin Land Trust properties, of which there are 28. And then you have neighboring municipalities which own property in Berlin, open space property, specifically New Britain, which has park properties. They also have a large share of water company land that is in Berlin, as does Meriden, the city of Meriden have water company land. And then you have some state properties as well. Right away, looking at this map, everything that has some color to it, it's a little washed up on the screen that we're looking at, is open space in some form or another, which suggests that the town has a lot of well-connected open space, but there may be opportunities to do an even better job of connecting open space in town. The town also has private property that's in the PA 490 taxing program. PA 490 is a reference to Connecticut Public Act 490 that allows properties that are forested, if they're 25 acres or more, agricultural lands, or other open space properties that are part of the town's open space plan, which could be expressed in a dedicated open space plan that a conservation commission might create, or through the POCD. Any of those classes allow a property owner to apply for the program, in which case they get a reduced tax rate. provided they hold the property in that use for a certain period of time. So that the town does have a number of property owners and parcels that are taxed at the 490 rate, and the state sets the rates for that, which is a much lower rate than they would otherwise pay in taxes. And the incentive of this program is for people to conserve their properties or continue agriculture on the properties. When you take a look, you can see that some of these are very, very large parcels, and they're spread throughout the town. And they're quite valuable in the role that they play in providing open space to the town. So there's a lot of incentive to keep those from being developed if these properties are strategic for open space purposes. Now, when we layer those two maps together, so we're showing you the open space map layered with 490 properties, what we see is much of the town is covered by one or the other, and it's roughly half the town, give or take. And what we also see is that the tan areas being 490 properties, and the green areas being the town parks and open space. Is combined, they create much larger areas of open space, which is really important to habitat. Larger mammals need much larger areas of habitat to sustain themselves. So that open space through the PA 490 program and really functions now and contribute in the future to improving the ability of the lands that you have to support habitat. And Anthony will talk a little bit more about that. And of the open space, not all of it is parks. Right? Much of it is passive open space. It's forested. It's land held for conservation. But the town does have a lot of parks and recreation facilities. And here's a map of that. And New England Geo, we're working with them to get this mapping up to date. And this is the latest version. It was just updated last week. And so the town has diverse recreation facilities. Now, not all of these parks play an important role with respect to natural resource protection. Some of them are more active recreation sites, but the larger ones also have that have passive open space play a role in natural resource protection and habitat as well. The recreation facilities in town range from athletic field to ball courts to playgrounds, pools, fishing, kayak launch, golf course, and it, all of the types of services and facilities that you would expect in the park system. And here's a list of all those parks, and then there's a number of them, which includes athletic facilities at school grounds, athletic fields, dedicated recreation facilities, outdoor pools, tennis courts, that sort of thing, playgrounds, pocket parks, and a lot of various passive open space sites that might have trails and small picnic areas, that sort of thing. Now, I'd like to shift gears a little bit here and turn it over to Anthony to talk a little bit about the important function of open space in the town and what some of those natural resource features are. So Anthony, go ahead.
Thanks, Francisco. Yeah, as Francisco mentioned, not all the recreation spaces are prime biodiversity hotspots, but some are. And these areas that provide important functions and values for biodiversity also have a number of ecosystem functions that benefit humans as well. And prime example being aquifer protection. And so although there may be one small area designated as an aquifer protection zone in relation to the whole town area wide, there are watersheds that contribute to high quality stream systems, a network of stream systems into town. And that high quality water not only supports a diversity of aquatic organisms, but acts as recharge for groundwater that's directly being used by residential wells. So that's one example of how these areas can double for both ecosystem function and for benefits to humans. And you'll see that a lot of the mapped areas of known endangered species in the town occur either along these water courses or in the upper reaches of the watershed, such as the Traprock Ridges that border the town to the east and to the west. Yeah, like right through there. Those ridge lines are biodiversity hotspots. They are aesthetic resources because they are prominent features of the landscape that can be seen from quite a distance in town. And they also provide a source of cool air to the lower valley regions and residential areas adjacent to them. So you can, in the summertime, also benefit from that cool, clean air coming down from those ridges, as opposed to, the real hot temperatures of an urbanized city center. And I'll talk more about biodiversity a little bit later on, but if you advance to the next slide, you can see that the state has mapped out a lot of the locations of these natural diversity areas. Looks like that it got moved. Sorry about that. And they appear as, yeah, there we go. They appear as those little shaded round polygon shapes. Okay, and those are just the known locations. Oftentimes when you go out and you do biological assessments, we often come across additional unknown locations, and a prime area to find them would be in these large forest habitat blocks that have not been disturbed. So places down like in the southwest corner around the Meriden reservoirs, up on top of the Traprock Ridges. Next slide, please. And you see these ridge lines tend to be oriented in a north-south direction. And because of that, they have this very unique physiology where the western slopes are often exposed to the afternoon sun, which is the hottest time of the day. And so that rock face and the summit can heat up and get extremely dry. And the tops of these ridges tend to be have species that are adapted to drought conditions and high temperature extremes, as opposed to the very bottom of these slopes when they're shaded in forest or shaded by an adjacent ridge. More importantly, you can get species growing within the bottoms of these ridges in the talus that are more indicative of northern forest and are not found in the rest of Connecticut, and actually are more common in northern New England, like Vermont, Maine, and even Canada. Next slide, please. So we have this unique physiographic system that occurs with these Traprock Ridges. I mentioned the afternoon sun baking that warm rock face and creating these updrafts of warm air, and warm air goes down into the talus to replace the air that's the cooler air that is leaking out from the bottom. That talus is there because of the jointing in the bedrock, which are crystalline fissures that eventually dissolve from the rainwater, and then create a space in those rocks, rock fractures that through freeze and thaw action break off and produce more talus. And so what happens is you can actually get real cold air coming out through the bottom, because ice can form in those talus down in the spaces in that talus, and that ice can last sometimes into the early summer months if they're, especially if when there's another ridge blocking and shading that western exposure. So you get to create these real extreme microclimates where it can be ridiculously cold in comparison to the rest of the state down at the bottom on some of those slopes, and ridiculously hot up on the top. And those temperature extremes results in real specialized species, and that's one of the reasons why some of these species are rare. So, you know, Berlin has that real unique feature to it, and a responsibility for protection of that biodiversity.
Anthony, can you talk a little bit about what that biodiversity is comprised of in Berlin and along these ranges here that extend down to Maryland?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
What
Yeah, you know, a good example is University of Connecticut did what's called a bio blitz, which is where they get as many different scientists in one place for a 24-hour period as they can get. You know, specialists in each taxonomic group, and turn them loose out in the field and see how many different species they can find in one location. So in the year 2000, Hubbard Park in Meriden, you know, Hubbard Park being part of that Hanging Hills, which Berlin shares a part of that mountain feature with. In the year 2000, Hubbard Park was the site of the BioBlitz. And in that 24-hour period, they found 1,898 different species of plants and animals. So, you know, the breakdown, there's like 9 different mammal species, 82 birds, 6 reptiles, 12 amphibians, 9 fish, 300 species of butterflies and moths, 676 species of other insects, and so on, all the way down, even into the plants being like, you know, 475 different species of plants, various species of algae and mushrooms and liverworts and mosses. But the interesting discoveries included a species of assassin bug that had never been recorded in Connecticut before. So that was a new discovery. They also found 2 species of sedges, small grass-like plants that hadn't been seen in the state since 1916. So it's really pretty amazing, the biodiversity that can be found within these systems, and you know, certainly within the boundaries of your town.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, continuing on, go ahead.
Yeah, and so this is just how the watersheds are delineated within your town there. And you can see that just about all of the town drains to the northeast to the Mattabesset River. And these, as I mentioned, are high quality streams in the upper portions of the watershed. They consist of things like Belcher Brook and Hatchery Brook, coming down from these, you know, rural kind of rural landscape with not a lot of past industrial legacy contamination. So no surprising there that these streams are flowing as high quality, important resources for our aquatic organisms. And then as you get up towards the northeastern part of the town, when they start to get into more densely populated areas, they start to pick up, you know, the legacy contamination just from our commercial and industrial past in Connecticut. But it's real important that in terms of future water quality improvements, that we keep the source water flowing as nice, clean resource. And that allows us to be able to implement better design as we continue to grow and development progresses, that we can put in these protective measures for stormwater and things like that, and have a chance to clean up some of the lower reaches of these streams and the Mattabesset River, and return those ultimate receptors into high water quality resources as well.
Then our next slide will delve a little more into the water quality that we do have. Anthony, go ahead.
Okay, so you can see in this color code that those high water quality sources are both groundwater and surface water, right? And so up in the hills along the western portion of the town, you can see that you have some of the best groundwater quality in the whole town. So that's GAA. The G stands for groundwater. And the GAA means that it's used as a drinking water resource. So that groundwater there, you can drill down, set a well, and drink it probably directly without any treatment, at least in terms of, like I said, legacy contaminants. And they supply drinking water, the discharge, the natural discharge from those uplands into the lowland wetlands and reservoirs there actually supply municipal drinking water resources for towns of Southington and New Britain and Meriden. And so as the town begins to develop and more water resources are needed, that western side of the town there and that high quality groundwater offers you as a municipality a potential source of clean drinking water as well to meet the growing needs of future development. Class B groundwater, GB, means that it's not suitable for direct human consumption, and because it's not meeting one or more of the designated uses. And we have a slide that shows you what designated uses are per classification. So, GAA is a direct supply to a municipal drinking water source. GA means that it's probably suitable for individual wells, maybe not for a public water supply, but for individual wells, perhaps with some treatment, at least filtering, things like that. GB means that there's some kind of impacts there, so it's not suitable for direct consumption. And GC means that it's contaminated, and there's been some kind of past release of an oil or chemical spill that has rendered the site contaminated. And I don't see any mapped out here at this scale, but certainly, old gas stations that had leaking underground tanks and, other industrial spill sites and things like that may have a GC classification. And the goal is, the state's goal is to always improve on those designations. So they want to see GC areas return to GB, and GB areas, perhaps return to GA as future goals. And so the surface water classifications follow that same rating system. It's just that they add an S in front for surface water. So SA and SB. SA would be meeting all the designated uses for supporting aquatic life and recreation, fishable, swimmable waters, and even as a direct water source through production wells alongside a water course. And SB meaning that it's been impacted by some legacy contaminants or through stormwater and things like that. And the goal would be to find ways to increase that water quality in the future.
So when Anthony talks about the GB water qualities, that's the lime green color north of 372 and going in, extending up into New Britain. And as he mentioned, the lower quality waters in that area are associated with a long history of industrial uses of land in that area. And what's harder to make out, and you might be able to see it in the PDF we sent around, is that the individual rivers and streams, many of those are rated. And the upper reaches, all those brooks and rivers are very clean. And it's just the lower Mattabasset River that is B level surface water quality. Once again, that lower Mattabasset is up and that goes through the green area as it's heading over to Middletown. Now, not every single water body in town is assessed and rated by the state. So these classes here aren't picking up some of the ponds that you might have in town where you're having water quality issues, whether it be because of sediment or algae blooms or invasives, the water chestnut, that sort of thing. These are picking up the bigger water bodies. So we know there's some localized issues, even though overall the system health looks pretty good. We know you have some local issues with ponds and water bodies and parks.
The color of the blue and then the lavender, what does that, I can't read the key.
Yeah. So the blue on the west side of town, that's all groundwater. And then the lavender or the purple, that's surface water in those same areas. And all of those are top rated, are very clean. Both the blue for groundwater means it's GAA, it's top, it's the cleanest, and as well as the purple for surface water.
Yeah.
Your real issues are in the northeast part of town because that's where everything's flowing down that way. And as you get closer to the northeast part of town, that's where a lot of the historical industry was.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. All right, thank you.
And we do have a couple of slides that explain what all those classes are. We're not going to read it now, but we wanted to put it in there so you have access to that. So this is surface water and groundwater as well. Explains exactly what those mean. Okay, any questions at this point before we move on to stormwater management? Okay.
Yeah, it's really good.
We're going to come back, Anthony's going to come back. We have a couple slides to talk about species of concern and invasive species.
Can I just go back to the biodiversity?
Yeah.
And you talked about a study back in 2000 over at Hubbard Park. Was there anything done closer, like in our town?
Anthony, did you hear the question?
Yes, I did. I heard the question. And I think there, on an individual parcel basis, there may have been some inventories done. We're still in our data gathering phase. I found some references to some individual studies, and I forgot where. I'll have to sift back through my notes, but not on a town-wide basis and not on a system-wide basis. Like I said, those Traprock Ridges, they vary here and there. So, real high chance that that there are rare species up there. So whenever any development proposals come along that may impact those ridge lines and those intact forest blocks, one should be very careful as to what's being proposed and how it may impact that biodiversity, because there's a very good chance that these species of conservation concern occur up in those areas. So we'll have to get back to you on which parcels have been inventoried. It may have been some of the land trust parcels for conservation purposes, but off the top of my head, I can't tell you right now.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So related to water quality is the MS4 permit that the town has, that it's required to comply with state mandate with respect to monitoring water quality and protecting water quality as related to its stormwater system. So the MS4 stands for municipal, that's the M, and separated storm sewer system. That's the S, and four S's. So it's a clever state acronym. What that program does is it required every town in Connecticut to develop a stormwater management plan and to do annual reporting on progress towards meeting requirements of the plan. and managing the stormwater system. And towns that have the more impervious surface the town has, generally speaking, there's more the town's going to need to do to manage and mitigate any impacts to local water bodies from stormwater that's getting dumped straight into the water body without being treated. And there are certain requirements for areas, I'll get to that in a minute. Not the entire town is not required to comply with this program. It's really areas where you have a certain amount of density or impervious surface and with direct connections into water bodies from the stormwater system. So that's another term here, is directly connected impervious area, or DCIA. And that's impervious areas that are draining straight into a receiving water body. And that the hatched, yellowish hatched area is the area that's within the program that's being regulated. And that covers much of the town. And each one of those green or red features is a potential threat to water quality. You have a couple of municipal solid waste sites in town, and some sites that are permitted to discharge wastewater. Those are the red triangles. There's a lot that needs to be managed through this plan to protect water quality. Now, with respect to impervious surface, 30% of Berlin has an impervious surface coverage of 12% or more. So that's a couple percentages. I don't want to confuse you with that. This is the way to think about it. Think about your property. Impervious surface on your property would be the house, right? The roofs of the house, it would be your driveway, any paved areas. Everything else is generally impervious. If you have a gravel surface, it's not as effective as lawn or forest, but it's still somewhat pervious. If 12% of your yard is impervious, that means 88% is pervious. So you have a lot of space that can absorb water. What the research suggests is that when impervious surface exceeds 12%, that it can be just disproportionately more impactful to water quality and aquatic life. So anywhere you have in town where the impervious surface is exceeding 12%, that it falls into the program, and you have to do something to help mitigate the impacts to water quality and to aquatic life. However, less than 1/3 of Berlin exceeds that 12% impervious surface. Now, a function in all of this is your soils in town, and for a couple of reasons. First of all, well-drained soils basically can send water right into the groundwater with very little. You have very little time to intercept anything that might have been accidentally released. However, poorly drained soils don't absorb as much water, so you tend to get more runoff directly into streams and other water bodies. So the advantage of well-drained soils is that you can design systems to intercept and catch stormwater on site, infiltrate it on site. You can be pretty effective in doing so. And the town is really a mix. A good part of Berlin are well-drained soils, and this is the post-glacial, fluvial floodplain soils of the Connecticut River Valley. So you have a mix of sands and silts and other fine soils. However, there are some areas of silt and clay deposits which are not well drained. And those are mostly the areas in blue and to a lesser extent in gray. And those clay areas coincide with some of the brick foundries that were originally, for obvious reasons, a great big wave. Right, exactly. But what this map does suggest is that the well-drained soils you have in town can be useful when you think about new development developers can design systems to help catch and collect most of the rainwater on site and infiltrate it into the ground versus having it run off and discharge into a stormwater system and increase the amount of water you have directly going into storms and rivers or into streams and rivers during storm events. So it's a mixed bag, but there's some real opportunities here. The stormwater management plan identifies what some of those opportunities are. So the stormwater management plan is comprised of multiple elements. A good part of it is really just education. It's trying to keep people from overusing pesticides, throwing things down the drain they shouldn't throw down the drain, picking up their pet waste, and all that sort of thing. The other part of it is construction activities can be a pretty big source of sediment that flows into rivers and impacts water quality. Is controlling erosion from construction sites. So that's another big part of it, and that's why having some good measures that are required within your zoning regulations can be helpful. And this commission, or the Planning and Zoning Commission, that is, reviewing for that sort of thing on applications is really important. Inland wetlands, they tend to look at that sort of thing too. And then finally, there's the things that the town can do, which is the town monitors stormwater quality, cleans up catch basins, and seeks to minimize infill and infiltration into the stormwater system, basically groundwater flowing into the stormwater system, and keep those systems separated. So the stormwater management plan, it's already something that's well underway. So the POCD is something that POCD has to take action on, but there are things that the POCD can do to support the goals and the aims of the stormwater management plan, which is basically just to improve water quality. Okay. Any questions on stormwater management before we continue?
I have a question. So, I mean, just thinking ahead with planning and zoning and with development in town.
Yeah.
Is it best then to try to avoid storm water drainage and or curbing as much as possible when it comes to development? To just let
Yes.
the water just
Yes,
run out?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I do know, it was interesting what you said about, that the catch basins should be clean. And that's one thing that I'm sorry to say the town is horrible at, is getting out to those catch basins that are out toward the country that are filled with the cups and the plastics and the
Yep.
twigs and everything else. And I usually will go by, take a stick and try to clean them out so the water can flow,
Yeah.
flow down. But if we're not gonna do that, if we're not gonna be good janitors to that situation, then maybe what we have to do is rethink, do we really need curbing?
Yeah, so the stormwater management plan does require the town and DPW to do a certain level of keeping up with catch basins. Now, what the town doesn't have direct control over all those catch basins that are being installed on private property. Parking lots that are discharging into the town's stormwater system. And so to the extent that you can reduce that and have developers, I'm thinking commercial properties now, or maybe even multi-family residential developments, collect water through rain gardens and on-site catch basins, and collect it on site and have it infiltrate the ground on site rather than overwhelm the stormwater system. You can help towards what the stormwater management plan is trying to achieve, which is protecting water quality and aquatic life in your streams, rivers, other surface bodies.
Okay.
So there are a lot of things we can do that would contribute towards what the stormwater management plan is trying to accomplish. And that can be done through the zoning, and these are recommendations that the OC make.
I can help kind of remind everybody, or maybe some of the newer members understand that we do frequently have comments from engineering where they want the smart sponges put into the catch basins on the private sites. Remember that comment
Yeah.
made quite frequently, as well as rain gardens and subdivisions. From several subdivisions that have been required to install the rain gardens on several, if not more lots. A lot of it comes when they've gone to wetlands first, when the properties also have an impact with wetlands, but engineering does utilize that through the stormwater management plan and then the comments to the planning and zoning commission as well. So I hope everybody heard me. I'm sorry I talked backwards.
I got a question, just in stormwater. About the sponges and stuff that are put in now, that's a relatively newer system that they're putting in. And I like the idea of that. Is there a maintenance program that should be done by the landowner or the town on those sponge systems?
There's usually one worked into their site plan that they have to report or give Jim, give our engineering
Do they report
division
it back to the-
goes, it's a lot like the zoning issue
Yes.
where it's one where we have to
that
go
5
out and
years,
check it
they
out
have-
and look into it,
So maybe inland wetlands does that?
engineering or report back, or if we find there's a problem, going out and getting those sponges fixed,
that-
but they're supposed to have a
This is
management
my,
with it,
my-
is my
my-
recollection.
my
Again, I
question
don't
is,
manage
is
it.
when there's, the statement just made, when there's a problem, we go out. and
We'd
check
like to get it before the
Okay.
problem.
And I know it's a good system. How do we be proactive on it and say, hey, you have to inspect this system every so how many years? And
Yeah.
report to the town.
I just
No.
can't answer that question off the top of my head. I'd have
Yeah.
to check with
Yeah.
engineering on it.
Yeah.
I think you correctly point to some of the challenges of any system, an engineered system, is that it requires maintenance to be effective. And so it may be that the simplest measures are really to the greatest extent possible, avoid systems that need a lot of maintenance or could fail. And so that means, rain gardens are remarkably simple systems. You push the water into naturalized areas. You
Yeah.
just let the ground, nature do what it does.
Yeah.
Right?
Detention ponds and stuff like
Yeah.
that, that they still need some kind of maintenance because once it's silted.
They do, they're supposed to be mucked out periodically.
Right.
Right.
And I don't think we have that system in place, what I mean?
I think-
To monitor it. We do it on a demand system when something fails,
Right.
and go out and look at it,
Yeah, okay,
Okay, I'm making a note of that.
thank you.
All right, Anthony, let's turn it over to you to talk a little bit more about some species of concern in this part of the state.
Yeah, so this is the dark side of biodiversity. This is the diversity that you don't want. These are all the bad actors that have found their way into our state from other lands, other countries, other parts of the nation, and didn't occur here naturally. And so they have a bad rap sheet of impacting our native biodiversity through competition, direct predation, spread of disease, and directly impact a lot of the natural resources that are important to us. So, for instance, we're losing all our ash trees, green ash, white ash, in Connecticut, from a number of different pathogens, and now we have the emerald ash borer on top of that, drilling into the bark and into the wood and causing further damage. So, ash trees were, green ash grows in wetlands, white ash grows in the uplands. They were a dominant component of the tree canopy. So, when we start losing our native vegetation, we lose our shade that helps cool our houses and our streets. we lose aesthetic resources, we lose a source of firewood and wood used for other products, cabinetry and things like that. Some of these pathogens can become agricultural pests, so we start to have impacts to the productivity of our agriculture, requiring drastic measures sometimes by the farmers in the forms of increased pesticide use, which therefore directly impacts our water quality. And they're constant threats. And in the 30-something years that I've been doing natural resource management, I've seen these species, I'd like to say come and go, but I've seen them come and then never leave. And so more and more each year are showing up, and some have really become a problem in the past 20 to 30 years. Species like garlic mustard and common mugwort seem to be turning up everywhere. And you can go to many of the construction sites, and when they start stockpiling the topsoil, which they plan to reuse after the development, oftentimes these stockpiled soils are just become completely engulfed in common mugwort. The thing about a lot of these invasive plants is that they like disturbed soils, right? So as soon as the soil profile is disturbed and churned up and starts losing all of its natural properties in that profile, and it just becomes a homogeneous mix, that's a ripe medium for these invasive species to take over. So there's examples in the herb layer, examples in the vine layer, the shrub layer, the tree layer. We have invasive species in our aquatic resources now as well, ponds and lakes and rivers. There are some that occur below ground in the form of root rot diseases that may not be readily apparent to us. We have a pathogen now that has attacked all of our bat species, to the point where many of them have become threatened and endangered now when they used to be quite common. And so how many of you remember going outside in the field on a warm summer night and seeing, the sky loaded with bats zipping around, eating all the mosquitoes and biting insects? Now that's a rare sight to see, sad to say. And there's other threats on the horizon for additional pathogens coming into the state, which if your town doesn't have, probably will have soon. Spotted lanternfly is a prime example. It's now turned up in Fairfield County and as close as Cheshire, Connecticut. So, you can expect to probably see that within the boundaries of your town in the next year or two. My town in North Haven, most of our beech trees now are exhibiting signs of leaf dieback from beech disease. And up until maybe a year or two ago, scientists didn't even know what the disease was caused from. Now they think it's a nematode that gets inside the vascular tissue of the leaves. And then, of course, the different tick species. Everybody knows about the deer tick spreading Lyme disease, but Lyme is just one of probably 6 or 7 or 8 different ailments that you can get from ticks. And now we have more aggressive and faster crawling ticks, which is just what we need, right? Lone Star tick is all along the coast and probably will find its way up some of the major drainage basins like the Quinnipiac and Mill Rivers and things like that. So we need to be on the lookout for these things. We need to make sure that we are not approving developments that could set the stage for encourage the invasion of invasive species. We need to make sure that developers aren't using invasive plants as part of their landscaping schemes when they could very easily find a native species that has the same growth habit, the same aesthetic look, and same benefits of the species that they're proposing that are not native. And even species that are considered perhaps non-invasive, but that are non-native, should probably be discouraged as well, because we often see that there's a lag time when a lot of these species, a lot of these invasive plants were introduced through the nursery trade because of one or more features that landscapers liked. And in the first few years or so of their existence and use, perhaps they didn't act as bad. But then, just like in any population growth curve, you hit a corner of that curve and you enter that exponential growth stage, and if species becomes adventive and finds its way into natural systems, and then it's really hard to control, if not eliminate. So having an eye out for these invasive species and discouraging their colonization, discouraging the use in the nursery trade, and having probably a rapid response for new invaders, a process in place can really reap some benefits, and especially in your areas where you know that you have high natural biodiversity. You want to keep those areas protected. And that may mean not having access to every square inch of a conservation area, maybe keeping your trails and access ways to a manageable degree so that you can get out there and keep an eye on those areas where people frequent, and maybe leaving some of the further corners of that conservation area untouched and undisturbed.
Thanks, Anthony. And next slide.
Yeah, and so, this is why we do the things we do to reduce our impact for development, and to put thought into planning, and to set zones, because we're trying to protect that biodiversity. And quite frankly, there's laws into place that provides for their protection as well, and we don't want to do something that's contrary to the laws for these protected species. And it spans just about every taxonomic group that you can think of. Yes, we do have rare dragonflies in the state, and I'm almost certain in your town as well. There are rare moths and rare beetles. It's some of these species are not as charismatic as, say, a high-flying majestic eagle or hawk or falcon or something like that, but they're just as important in the web of life. And so making sure that all aspects of the landscape are treated with respect, again, will allow us to reap the benefits in the ecosystem services that this biodiversity affords us. And that includes ecotourism as well. There's a lot of people that spend a lot of money to see certain types of species, whether they be out on a walk, actively bird watching, nature photographers, even dog walkers can get some pleasure in finding natural areas that are otherwise undisturbed. So these people are going to come to those areas. You're going to buy gasoline to fill up their cars to get in from there. They're going to buy lunches. They're going to perhaps go out to eat afterwards, and they'll be spending money in your town as a result of it. So the town could become a destination for outdoor recreational activities.
Okay. Thanks, Anthony. So we're building upon our findings here, the inventories and the mappings. We're really most interested in having a conversation with you folks about some ideas for what the POCD might recommend with respect to preserving and enhancing open space and natural resources in town. So we've seeded this discussion with some ideas, and these ideas have been generated by staff and us coming up with some ideas. And we're very interested in your feedback on some of these ideas, what you think about them, and we want to figure out what the opportunities here are for the POCD to make recommendations. So we've got about 10 or so slides here, and the first one is the idea of preserving farms in town. And I don't think we're going to get an argument from anyone on this, but the real question is, how do you do that? And so we have some real basic ideas on that. It's to allow a house on a farming lot, POD zone, and to use town parcels as well for agriculture. As I understand it, haying is currently allowed through a license, but there's some limitations on that. So you tell me, what are your thoughts on the role of farms in town and what the town could or should do to preserve farm uses, farmland?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is purchase of development rights. Doing that would limit the ability of the property owner to develop and would make property more affordable for young adults that want to. The problem I see with development right purchases that I have been aware of is failure to consider terms that later on become important. Allowing for the young farmer to actually build buildings that are suitable for the type of farming he's doing.
Yep.
Not have terms be so restrictive when the terms are negotiated for that purchase.
Okay.
So
you see that as one potential tool for preserving farmland?
I do.
Yeah.
The concern I have with that is the volume of open space that we already have. And whether or not the town really would want to make that type of an investment.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, anyone else have thoughts on preserving agriculture or more specifically on purchasing developing rights?
I think that's the right way to go on that. I think two things. I think Berlin being known as a farming community, having that in town is a draw for both residents and businesses. But I also look at it as just what we've gone through in the past 18 months or so. There are more and more people who are really looking to get themselves, maybe they're not looking to get 20 acres, but maybe they want 5 or 10 acres where they can grow their own food, whether it be organic or not. I mean, we have people approaching us, if we buy a cow, we grow it for us for a year. I mean, so people are even looking into whole meat and things like that.
Okay.
So I just see if we're looking 10 years out, I can see where people are, I think, going to want to go back to it, maybe not on a grand scale. But I can see where more and more people are going, I think, going to want to go that direction. That's just my opinion, but just from different things I hear and talking with people, we see happening in some other, other states. Wyoming, big agriculture, but between the hay, the alfalfa, and the cattle business out there, they're starting to boom out there. Whether it's people going to California or et cetera. So I mean, it's happening in some areas, and we've got a lot of great land, we've got really good soil.
Yep.
So I think if we can, like I say, stick it out a little bit, still trying to keep it more farming now. You have out there allow houses on, on farming lots. So maybe if someone has a 25-acre parcel, okay, if you want to, maybe we look at it for 5 or 10 acres. Not necessarily a 20-house development, but maybe there's some flexibility in that.
Yeah, and if I might just interrupt for a second, because Maureen brought up a good point. She mentioned about some, having good soils. A lot of the different soil types within the town of Berlin are actually recognized as prime farmland soils in Connecticut. And a lot of them have a natural fertility just because they formed an association with those Traprock Ridges. And so they have high calcium content, and, you know, which adds to their value. So, you know, those areas of the town should probably be prioritized then as, you know, areas where you would want to encourage the agricultural use.
I think we also need to be a little bit more open, and Jim Mahoney and I have been talking about this back and forth a bit, but be more open to uses that might not be considered farming, but that would help to complement the ability of the farm to actually be profitable. You know, agritainment is the term that you hear most often, but you know, it's something that my family has done on our farm with hay rides, and one time we had a spooky hay ride. We are actually interested to maybe offer camping, and you know, with no amenities, just a dry camping. But you know, there are things that people are interested to do that help to support agriculture that isn't necessarily production. So,
Even like someone put up in Litchfield, we have some dominions that have, you know, even in Wallingford, you have an area that you can now and do, you know, whether they do showers or lights or things like that.
Right.
Where, you know, you're bringing things in, so it's not necessarily a facility that's cooking or doing any of that, but you have the beautiful venue that you want to utilize. To do something like that.
I think anytime that you can help somebody hold on to their property, even if they're not, say, you might have a farm that was farmed through the family. Now all of a sudden the parents have gone away. The family still has the parcel, unsure what to do with it. But the fact that they're holding it sort of in a trust, waiting to see, should we go back to farming or should we raise cattle, should we do that? I think anything the town can do on a financial side to help these people hold on to the extra land, whether it's a farm or an extra lot or anything, I think is and that's just a benefit to the town. Because that just allows for the town not necessarily to be the manager of the conservation easements or the farm, but I mean, it gives the town the chance to have the habitat be protected. If you do have wildlife that depends on it and traverses it without the cost to the town. In other words, the homeowner has it.
Yeah.
So you want to kind of encourage that.
The town over the last couple of years has done a lot. See if I can map, we just saw an open space conservation areas, especially with cluster housing, the open space in the town purchased, some of the right, those old tree, apple orchards and stuff like that, the town purchased. We got a lot of open space conservation, land trust and town. I agree with that. You know, the open spaces that we have now is basically the farmlands. And helping that be conserved is the best thing we can do. Town borough, you know, of this, you know, cluster housing, whatever we have, you know, sort of town and stuff, and we have our farm areas, open space areas that people love going and walk or whatever, going to bicycle in the park. But, you know, that's one that has been a real up thing for the town, because the towns are, the people are starting to use that now. They're starting to have to build parking lots at the end of the trails,
Right.
in order for people to
No,
go
we
park.
like that impervious surface.
But that's
Well, they can
right.
be
But that's
designed
me.
properly, though.
It's just, it should be gravel parking lots, not
Yeah.
car parking lots and stuff like that. But we have done a lot of that. And I think our farmland that we got now, just privately owned stuff.
But we
It
need
is
to
something that we
encourage-
gotta encourage them to.
We've got to encourage them to preserve the
Well,
forest.
but even,
yeah.
even if it's farm stands or they're selling their products or doing everything, you know,
Alright.
we gotta encourage that, because people are going back to natural
So
resources.
Okay.
let me just put something out there, just food for thought, because I really don't want to open up a can of worms.
No.
But, you know, it's, you want to promote farms, but yet the grocery stores, and I think back to the Johnson Garden Center
Yes.
property
Yeah.
on Chamberlain Highway, when they wanted to sell things in their shop and
Yeah,
you know, they were restricted on the things that they could or couldn't sell. And yet you go to Stop and Shop. Stop and Shop is selling hanging baskets and wreaths and
Yeah.
cemetery boxes and
Exactly.
potting mix. They're
Right.
supposed
Box
to be a
stores.
grocery store.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like you
You know,
punish
and-
the mom and pop, but you let the
Right.
big chain walk.
So, I mean, to me, those are things that just kind of go unnoticed. And, you know.
Is there a farm stand really on General Highway anymore? There's plenty of more.
Well, no, but I mean that there was that family that held the Johnsons on
Yeah,
the Chamberlain Highway and they got beat up. And they ended
Right,
up
because
closing,
of the-
but anyway, I know
Can't
the
sell
time is
soap,
short, okay.
But
But
let's-
anyway,
let's
okay,
keep-
go
let's
back
keep
on
going,
track.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah, we
trying
have a
get
lot of
back on
ground to
track.
cover. I think you've covered some of it already.
Yeah,
So here's another idea, and this goes back a lot of what Anthony was talking about, the ecological function and value of the ridges that you have here in town. And that would be to expand the ridgeline protection within the zoning regulations. There is right now, I did find a couple of small passages that refer to protecting ridgelines, but it's not real specific. It's a pretty broad requirement or statement. So the idea was you could potentially expand the protection within the zoning regulations. And the state has enabled communities to regulate through its Ridgeline Protection Act, all of these various features. It can include restrictions on tree removal, landscaping requirements, special environmental impact reviews that you could require, limits on density relative to the slopes, restrictions on colors and reflectivity of buildings, height limitations, buffers and setbacks, limits on vegetative and soil disturbances, coverage limits, lighting restrictions, there's a
Yeah.
range of things that the state enables municipalities to regulate. So that's something to think about, is whether or not you want your zoning regulations to be more robust in this area. And it's definitely a role of the POCD to make recommendations such as that.
Most part, it's
adopt that whole.
It is, you're correct, yeah, it's elevation based.
So it's
Yeah.
the elevation based on
Yeah,
higher
I
ridge
think
lines.
it's-
And
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
I know,
that's really no
I know.
restriction, basically.
That whole list right there.
So we brought in the cluster housing.
You have some of them.
Did
Okay.
some of the
I know, but when we think back.
ridge lines to bring down the. dams.
So we got a lot of conversations going on.
Sorry.
What, that's all right, well, I just want to pull it all together. So what, are you generally in agreement that there's more that can be done? to protect
Yes.
the ridge lines?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
'cause
Okay.
Yeah, we were
Really
just kind of
should
I'd
saying.
say more of that.
Yeah,
Like to beef it up some.
I just said, oh, let's adopt that whole slide.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Maureen advised me,
At
we
least
already
most
had
of
some of it, but I like the rest of it too.
Okay.
All I remember was just elevation, really, than anything with restrictions.
Okay. Okay. Good. The other thought would be to consider deed restrictions on additional town-owned parcels. For example, the Blue Hills Conservation Area, Pistol Creek, parcels on Chamberlain Highway, abutting the National Grove Conservation Area. So deed restriction, it basically limits the type of development or activities that can occur on the property. And town, generally speaking, any town that property owns is somewhat protected because the town holds it. But it's somewhat subject to the leadership you have in the town, and they could potentially sell it off for development or.
No, we don't want that.
We don't want that.
They could.
And the way you protect something in perpetuity is by a deed restriction, is you commit to that for life of the property. So that's another idea to consider. The town has to feel pretty certain that it's comfortable with that property having a limitation on what you do with that.
That's fine.
Some of the town fathers are really against putting any kind of restriction on the property because they're thinking baseball fields or recreation or whatever on the property. Future that stuff.
But I think a lot of our town here, our town-owned property is, if I remember correctly, like Crystal Creek. That's just basically just passive walking, and
Right.
I don't believe it is subject to ballparks or anything else like that.
And depending on how it's been acquired, it may have deep restrictions.
Yeah.
Right.
Always know right now.
And so here we're calling out for the properties that don't have any deed restriction, where it's more or less wide open what the town might choose to do with the property, or it might choose at some point to sell it.
Yeah.
For some reason. It's whether or not you really wanted to go a step further in protecting those properties through a deed restriction,
Yeah.
whether or not that should be a recommendation to POCD and a priority.
Well, and what comes to mind for me with that is any of this land that is town owned is funded by the taxes we pay.
Yep.
And where, the idea, I guess, of the development right purchase for the agriculture, at least somebody's still paying taxes to the town.
Yeah.
Well, that's
However, these are town-owned properties. They've already come off the tax rolls. And I think maybe one of the biggest challenges, particularly for a property that may be more recently acquired, is the idea of putting a deed restriction. It then brings up the conversation, well, why did we buy it? We're not going to do anything. I'm not sure everyone appreciates the value and the function of not doing anything with an important piece of property.
Blue Hills Conservation Area, is it a deed restriction? Does it?
I do not believe that it does.
Yeah, I just mentioned that because
Yeah.
I think moving over the next 10, 20 years, given the way the town is, and what's left, and you have all that Meriden water property that's prime, part, but I think a lot of people and developers are gonna be eyeing that kind of chunk of property, because it's, wedged between the Chamberlain Highway. Meriden is already has that area where the old power plant is on the side, designated as a development area. We're building into that, so it's only going to be making it more attractive for developers. And I think that because it's adjacent to the Chamberlain Highway and the scenic vistas we value and the views we get from that vista and that property, I think it's really something we have to consider moving forward.
Okay.
I think there are going to be a lot of eyes on that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're here. Yeah, there's some things that just.
So
I can't take
400 acres,
Yeah.
428 acres, whatever, just give it.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
would, which I don't even see on any of these maps, that would just deed it over to us, and there's not any restriction on it. So that's an area, and that's a ridge area too.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
it's a big ridge area that doesn't have deed restrictions on it.
Well, I think that's something.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, you talk
Okay.
400 something acres,
All right. Next.
All right.
Trying to keep him on track.
The next is to install more open space signage. This is a really nice example of some fairly new signage that was installed at the Chakowski Conservation Area. And there's a nice entrance sign along with some rules and pathway type signs. So the idea is to make a greater investment in distributing the signs throughout the town, and also, very importantly, along trail systems to help guide people along trails.
Trail comes through there, you know, the trees are breaking.
Yeah, it's really the trailheads where you have not, where signage can be
Right.
really important.
Trailheads
Yeah.
don't have anything.
Right.
And,
I think it's a good sign. That's a good idea.
I like the
Yeah,
signs,
Yeah.
but what we're missing
Yep.
is lack of parking.
You're anticipating a slide that we have coming up.
Here comes the
We're-
slide.
Aren't we normally a couple slides ahead of you?
Yes, that's the theme
Not
here. And so
All right.
folks are like a little further down the road.
Yeah, we had our coffee before we came.
Here's another idea is, well, this is something that the town is doing already, but to put it out there as an option for other properties is some site-specific improvements. For example, added soil mixing at Kensington Orchards. Basically, what's going on there is they're taking the soil and they're stirring it, they're mixing it to try to improve the quality of the soil and address some issues. So that's one tool in the toolbox. I don't know if there are any other sites in town you think that could benefit from that particular.
Where's
technique?
Kensington Orange?
There's many.
That's not-
Kensington Orchards is,
Jim, go ahead, yeah.
yeah, it's next to Chakowski's on the Chamberlain Highway. So it's kind of contiguous to the Hatchet Brook Conservation Area. It's the front part of the old Bradley property. It's like 55 acres. And we have the parking lot there now, but we went through a soil management process with Department of Health and Deep to do soil mixing and just restrict trails to specific areas. And so it does limit the use of the properties to some degree. Although we do, I think, have an adequate trail system, but if we want to use it more intensely, we'd have to do mixing like we did on the Chakowski property in the rear on the east side. And that was very successful. So we succeeded there. The state changed some of their rules from when we initially did the mixing on Kensington, or the trails on Kensington Orchard. So it's something we can look at again someday if we're interested.
I think it was to the Conservation Commission that there was an inquiry with regard to perhaps utilizing some of the trees and the berries that were there and all community farming that could use some of that, but because of some of the issues with deed, you can't go off the trail.
Yeah.
So it can't be used. So how do you marry if you want to allow people to use the town properties and maybe farm town properties that may have contaminations, then you have to do something
They,
to
They did that
mitigate it at
soil
the
science
same time.
survey on there, and they placed those trails like you said, and mixed the soil on. But there's really like super fun sites on the property that has not been,
They'd have to be
Discovered.
mixed, yeah.
well, they haven't
Or-
even discovered yet in the site. It's old farm land that they dug a big pit and dumped anything they wanted. Over the years.
The last bullet, it says parking lot construction and barn removal on Orchard Road at Blue Hills Conservation Area. Which barn are you looking at? The old Nelawajic barn?
Yes.
Oh, I love that old barn.
It's falling down, John.
Oh,
Yeah,
I know it's
that's-
falling down. That's why I
It's,
can't help
it's
it.
its condition.
It's leaning toward Sawyer's.
Right.
You take the barn down and sell the barn, which covers,
Yeah.
use the money to cover. the-
Cover the-
Yeah, we-
Trail
Yeah,
line.
will you leave the stone foundation?
We talked about Jim Maureen and I talked about this, and it's my understanding from discussions that it's really in bad shape, beyond salvageable. And, But the property sits on might be a great place for a parking lot to access the site. So it's dealing with what's becoming a hazard.
I want to get some pictures before.
Well, at the same time, maybe an opportunity
With
to
those barnwood
provide access.
Okay, thank you.
What we skipped over there, and these are all site ideas that are specific to certain sites. So what we skipped over was to re-explore a recreation facility at Silver Lake. The state of Connecticut owns a property there. And it's my understanding they took a look at doing something in the past, and perhaps the cost was too high, or they lost interest, they walked away. Is that something we should re-explore?
How do you define recreation facility?
Jim, talk about that a little bit.
Do you want, yeah, so in the detention basins where they put the dredged soils from Silver Lake project. We did explore, we had a consultant that did some exploration of putting playing fields down there, Parks and Rec was interested in playing fields. But the cost to stabilize the sites, fill the basins, because of the peat, you had to remove peat or mix peat to create a stable footprint for the recreational facilities, plus long driveway, remote facility, need to have irrigation. So it wasn't economically feasible. The state does have some money to restore the site. It just, wasn't enough to do the job. It wasn't even close, but we also had talked over time with the Conservation Commission about just using it as open space. The state would love to give us the site, but there is some arsenic over the standards in the dredged material, which you'd have to deal with again through some means of removal or mixing or whatever. So you have to have a strategy and have to have the funds to deal with it. So again, we looked at the playing fields, didn't work, but can look at it again or look at it for different uses.
It sounds like it's going to be more trouble than it's worth. No, I mean, honestly, because if my memory serves, it's been a while since I've been down to Silver Lake, and if you're talking about Norton Lane, which is a pretty one-way road, and you kind of go over a little makeshift bridge, and then you get to the state site, which basically is for a boat. It's a boat launch. Right. That's what it is. So I don't know. I don't know if the town would really invest in developing that whole strip there. I mean, it would be a big impact. I don't know, maybe down the future, 20 years from now.
So
right
this
now,
might not be one of the top priorities.
Yeah, I kind of think back on that.
Okay.
I don't know, that's my feeling.
Jim, is the state thinking about doing any more dredging in there and make that lake a really viable lake?
I think they think they're done with the dredging, but there were concepts to do another phase, but you have to get the funding. So that would have to be, our legislators and Meriden's legislators getting the money like they did the first time. And I haven't seen any push behind that.
It's a beautiful lake when you get the views.
Yeah,
It's a good size. It's but it doesn't have the depth to it that needs to be that right. Because we keep on growing up. Yeah. Sun gets down to the bottom of the lake.
Gets a little too warm. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
One other area that maybe we should consider is at the end of Park Drive, which is currently blocked. There's a big wide open area there that could be utilized for parking.
For
hikers, because this is like the back way to get into Hubbard Park.
Oh, at Hubbard Park. Okay.
So I can tell you from experience that there are hiking clubs that will park from the end of Park Drive and they come all the way down
Oh, wow.
and onto Edgewood Road in hazard curve areas. But that road was closed by agreement between Berlin and Meriden.
Okay.
And Berlin's paying the price for it.
Gotcha.
Oh,
Okay.
well, we better correct that.
All right. And then the other parking idea was to expand the proposed parking at Ragged West Lane as part of the preserve project. How many of you are familiar with the? what's
So
being-
that's the PR2 that was approved last year. The zone was approved last year on West
Shuttle.
Lane, just at the south end of Shuttle
You're
Meadow.
right.
And there's a, small parking and pull-off parking really, just along there, but part of their presentation as well as part of our suggestion to them was that perhaps they have a little corner of land to help the town
People
to
were parking
facilitate
anyway.
parking. What
So
the
there's
partnership would be or not is,
Okay.
remains to be seen with that proposal, but at the same time, the demand is there again. I counted up to 50 cars.
Wow.
During the summer, it's West Lane is just parking.
Is it really?
And
Well-
both sides of the road and people can't get down, the homeowners can't
I
get down.
think that's
Yeah.
because also if you go into Southington, the
The
other
other side,
side
yeah.
by
Reservoir
Rogers
Road.
Orchard.
Yeah.
No, Rogers
That's it.
Orchard,
Yeah.
they actually the state put up a huge fence, it's chain link fence, and it's got signs on it, so you can no longer park and cross over and get to the other side of Ragged Mountain. So that's why it's so it's great for Southington. But now Berlin's gonna be the reception, we're gonna be the area, so you're gonna have those streets and that's gonna be a mess.
I would say putting, parking at Ragged and West Lane would be well above anything at Silver Lake, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that, yeah.
Just to help the people living in that.
They can actually push that park place for down the road that ends. And where the riprap comes up, I don't know what you call it, on a slide you have there, where all the water falls down.
Yeah, the talus slope.
Talus,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yep.
And, where that is a big area there, that could be gravel and, used down in that area. Because that road was fun. Went all the way back out to the other side.
Okay. All right, well, let's keep moving.
Yes,
Trails.
please.
Trails. What do you think about the possibility for additional trail connections throughout town, connecting all these various properties and sites? You do have a pretty good trail network, but there are some gaps that could be closed, trails that could be expanded. Certainly, we've talked quite a bit about access, getting access to those trails, being able to park, and access them. Yeah, what are your thoughts on trails?
I think it's probably good in some areas and not necessarily other areas. I remember a few years ago, they were trying to do trail access. And it was going to be right along property lines for a home development. And, the homeowners were like, I don't care that people hike there, but to try and make an access where now, it's really gonna be right in my backyard. I think if there's rooms for that, or if there's a way we can do it, I think it's a great idea. But I think we have to be really careful where and how we do it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, gotta be respectful.
Avoid conflicts with residential property.
Yeah.
I don't like Steeple View.
Well, that would be great. Steeple View into Bicentennial.
Yeah, that, the Steeple View people go crazy.
Well,
But there is no access to, as far as I know, to Bicentennial Park from Steeple.
Yeah, the town has a strip of land that we reserved when they did the subdivision, but we never put signage or made the connection.
That's in the second part of the set.
It's all the way up at the end, I think, right, Jim? It's all the way up
Pardon
at the end. It's all the way up at the end of Steeple View.
There's a couple, I think there's two of them up there. I'd have to look at the map again, but I think there's two places.
we have a couple of groups there. The top bullets there are trail connections within land that the town already owns. Yeah.
I have a question. Hey, Jim, wasn't
Yes.
there, going back a long time, wasn't there on Kensington Road, closer to Elton Road, a strip of property that the town had that went to Bicentennial Park?
Yeah, there's a piece there where Chris Trolley did the little subdivision. And, you know, so we have, you know, these are the, I guess, you know, you have these additional access points. So, you know, like you said, maybe they're not all appropriate to, you know, to promote, but, you know, at least, you know, especially from neighborhoods and such, that even if you don't create any parking there or whatever, that people know that you have an access point that's it's signed and they can, you know, they can get into Bicentennial Park that way. So these are the things, again, you know, we'd have to deal with it on a case by case basis, but it looked like, you know, we've done so much with the trails within the parks that, you know, connecting them better to the neighborhoods seemed like an idea worth exploring.
Yeah, I think that'd be valid for Steeple View and Kensington Road, because right now, the only way I know to get to Bicentennial is to go Cole Lane. And now crossing the dog poop section, you kind of take your life in your hands, so I would rather go on the other side and access through Kensington Road or through Steeple View.
Yeah, and everything's connected now between Hatchery Brook and Bicentennial. So, you know, you can also park at Chakowski, you can park at Kensington Orchard, you can park at Shearer property and get to Bicentennial if you want to walk farther.
Okay, all right, good to know.
You got up there Lamentation.
Yep.
Pistol Creek.
Pistol Creek to
Lamentation.
Lamentation, yeah.
I don't know, Jim can confirm this with me, but I think Pistol Creek goes all the way to that paper road that's in the back, right on Middletown, Berlin line. It's something.
Yeah, Pistol Creek, there's properties in between, like the Hanson Farm, you know, so you'd have to get to that Stantac Road area. And so you'd have to make connections again, whether, you know, it's just things, you know, we could explore if we want, but there are, you know, the land trust bought more land on Lamentation, and, you know, we're getting more information from CFPA. So a lot of the land is protected up there. And so if you can connect some of these things, that's what we're going to explore a little bit more in our mapping exercise, and we'll bring you something back to talk about at a future meeting.
And there's a 50-foot right of way to run between the Haber's property, the two Habers. It goes right into Lamentation, right alongside of Lamentation Drive. Yes, it is. There's a 50-foot section of road, the paper road goes out through there. It was, I think, might have been abandoned, but there was a road there that I think is, you know, accessed and then put a parking lot further in. You know, for the cars.
Yeah, good deal.
Be a place to put an access in.
Yeah.
So I think
All
some
right.
of those connection points and strips we have are one of the things that we were looking at or talking about of putting the signs. So
Yeah.
like you said, somebody can walk in, if it's from a neighborhood, they can walk into the trail without necessarily parking improvements, having to go into all locations, but it creates connectivity throughout the town. And if I may take the 10 seconds just to remind the commission that, and maybe some of you don't even know, that on our town website, on the GIS, if you go on the GIS, there is trail mapping. And so if you guys are thinking about a certain trail and you want to zoom in on an area, we have, the trails are pretty well up to date on there. And it's a real great thing to hunt and pack and explore. It's fun.
One that I always think about is this down East Berlin. Okay, there's old railroad tracks run down past the
Past Beckley Quarry,
place.
down
What's it
down
called?
there,
Place
right.
that- On the end of Berlin Street. But anyway, there was a railroad station down there at the end of Berlin Street. And there's a railroad track all the way up through. Okay, that would, you know, rails, trails, that thing
Right.
would be excellent.
Okay.
You know, through there, going up to the quarry and stuff like that, that's back there. I mean, there's quarry ponds, gorgeous ponds, clear water ponds, that.
Yep.
I didn't see on your water.
All right, that's good. Thank you. Thank you.
That's-
All right,
that's
so-
real-
So
real
the
obvious.
basic idea here is that we think there remains a lot of potential to improving and better connecting the trail system and providing access to open space. And the POCD can support that, maybe by recommending some very specific connections. And that could happen within property the town already owns or controls. Or maybe in some cases, we recommend that easements be acquired or property be acquired to connect those gaps. That's the big idea. And these are a bunch of examples on how to do it. And we're gonna have some time to get into the details of that. You know, we're not, we won't be creating a robust trail plan for the town, but we want the POCD to lead it off in the right direction. It's something that a committee or commission can take and run with.
Very
Okay.
good. Very good. Thank you.
9 ponds.
Get access to them, get some trails down to them. That's the idea.
Next.
Water improvement.
Okay, and some more specifics on this. There are specific properties in town where expanding the trail system and connecting to neighboring towns holds some real potential. Ragged Mountain to the Shuttle Metal property is an example. There's some trails there already, but those trails could be further protected, enhanced, expanded. And then I just mentioned, you know, your neighboring towns. There's some real potential here to work collaboratively with Britain, with Meriden, with surrounding communities to protect and piece together larger tracts of open space. So to work across town boundary to preserve, protect open space, and to expand and improve the trail systems. And Anthony, if you're still online, I'm not sure if you dropped off to work on anything else. Could you talk a little bit about the importance of working across town lines to protect these larger areas of land?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, from the biodiversity perspective, you know, these species don't recognize these geopolitical borders, right? And so their habitat and home ranges, you know, probably include these adjacent municipalities because it's part of a larger habitat block. You know, so like a lot of the species that I mentioned that were found at Hubbard Park in Meriden on that BioBlitz, that's part of that greater Hanging Hills ecosystem and the Traprock Ridgeline there, and the extended forest block, which, you know, extends up into Berlin. Same thing on the east side of the town with Lamentation Mountain and the Ridgeline over there. Large distinct forest blocks. And these features of the landscapes, they become wildlife corridors. We've seen the reintroduction of black bear in the state on its own, coming down from, you know, Western New York and Massachusetts and finding its way down these Traprock Ridges because of these large forest blocks. And they're also a stronghold for bobcat and fisher and, you know, these top predators that help to stabilize the ecosystem and make it healthier. These are predators of the white-tailed deer. And in municipalities, where you don't have these top predators, the deer run rampant and really impact the habitat. You know, down in Fairfield County, where you have this high development, but also local ordinances that prevent hunting for one reason or the other. The deer realize and figure out where they're not hunted, and they become stationary herds. And so now you see many properties down in Fairfield County where, you know, they're erecting these tall deer fences around their whole lot because the deer is just eating everything, and also being hit by cars on the parkway and on the roadways and highways. So promoting that connectivity and having that stable ecosystem that'll take care of itself can really prevent the expenditure of resources, and, time, energy, and money to address problems that could just be taken care of on its own.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, yeah, I
Let's,
agree.
let's think beyond the town boundaries in our approach to this and recommend some strong collaboration with,
So I even think Pistol Creek, you have Pistol Creek to Lamentation, but
Yes.
Pistol Creek, I think, also borders on Middletown. And I think they have big farmlands there too. So
okay,
that's.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that Ridgeline Protection Pact, that was a 17-town collaboration back in 1998, where they all these towns along this Metacomet Ridge got together and said, listen, we recognize that these Traprock Ridges is a tremendous recreational and biodiversity opportunity, an aesthetic feature of our landscape. Let's get together. Let's all make a pact to develop, zoning regulations to protect these ridges. So, but we've seen challenges to the verbiage in those. So I think that's why Francisco brought that up earlier as a point, to revisit some of the language and maybe even look at some of those case studies like Cedar Mountain and Newington and the proposed Carabetta development down in Meriden on Cat Hole Mountain. Over time, see how these challenges came about, see what was being challenged in those municipalities' regulations, and using that to strengthen your own.
Okay, great.
thanks, Ann.
You're welcome.
Okay, another idea, Beckley Quarry. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the properties.
That's where I'm just talking about.
Oh, this is it. Okay, all right.
But
All right,
you got it ending right. That's where.
Well, that's where the map is.
But it goes
Yeah.
further right down.
Okay.
So I'm not familiar with where Beckley Quarry is. Someone give me an idea.
You know where the gun range is?
Yes.
Over in East Berlin?
Yes.
Okay, it's down at the top of that.
Okay, all right.
It's all in there.
Okay.
And
Yeah, as long as I have a general idea, so that
Yeah.
helps me. Thank you.
So, so the real question here is, should the town provide some improvements at this location? Parking on White Oak, improving the trails, providing signage, and then coordinating on connections to nearby open space, more extensive trail. Is this a place in town worth investing a little more?
I hear the quarry is supposed to be beautiful.
Yeah.
So, I've never seen it.
Yeah, I know.
I've lived through all
Pull
my
all
life.
the cars, gotta pull all the cars out. before they first install the car.
You gotta get the cars out?
I-
Okay.
I inherited 2 cars over the years, loading them up.
But yeah, it would be good.
Okay.
I think the thing that always strikes me in open space and stuff like that, and these walkways, is that how do we avoid the ATVs?
Yeah,
This is the problem, because you get them
Yeah.
from out of town,
I
and
know.
they just traverse and they rip up
they do a lot of
everything.
damage.
And you're trying to protect the wildlife, trying to let just people get out there and enjoy themselves. And then now they have to
Yeah.
worry about getting run over by ATVs.
Somehow Avon and Salisbury corrected that problem. I don't know how they did it. They got gorgeous trails up there.
They
Yeah,
shoot tigers.
Farmington, Avon, Salisbury.
That's
You know,
not-
and the ATV traffic, they stopped it somehow.
I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, I think they actually got ATVs for the police.
Yeah.
We got, I can tell you, we
we
got ATVs for the police also.
Okay. All right.
got that.
Anyway.
Well, I was gonna say, they have systems that work in New Hampshire and Maine and Vermont that enable use of the ATVs on properties. And the people that have them need a place to ride. I'm not a fan of them, and I wouldn't advocate opening all trails, but maybe it would be worth considering opening some
Well,
trails.
they have,
Well,
they
if you
have, right,
open
New
one,
Hampshire,
it's gonna
Vermont,
be-
so they have trails, walking trails, and they have ATV
Yeah,
trails,
it's just,
which
I'm
are
afraid if
separated.
if you,
We can't even join.
yeah, but part of me says if you open one trail, then everybody, it's gonna be like that dog park. The bicentennial, it was on the radio. Everybody, it's even on dog lovers, Connecticut park friendly, and it's not a dog park, it's a whole thing.
Gotta walk
It was- So now we got a mess on our hands because everyone comes, but I guess that's what my question is.
All right, so that's one of the
because-
concerns. and
Yeah,
then
it's-
Maybe we
yeah.
could take a look at some best
Yeah.
practices for how that is managed.
Yeah, all right,
Okay.
terrific, thank you.
All right,
And one of the reasons we called out Beckley Quarry was just because of all the multifamily development that is occurring in that area of town, and it's like Pistol Creek. Pistol Creek's the only open space area in that, section of East Berlin, and this is the only one in this particular section with all the multifamily development. It's just something to keep on the radar to try to make some improvements out there.
What current trails allow for worse or not? I don't know. So that's why I'm just asking, because friends of mine say, hey, is there anywhere to go riding?
My
on the
head
trails? I'm
was
like, I don't
Thinking the
know.
same thing. I was trying to
There is horse
think if
Yeah.
I could,
I
and I don't know off the top of my head.
I have no problem.
Okay.
Because I know
I've
routinely the
always-
water property, they said, the water company said, go ahead, no problem, because it's not gas, oil, or whatever.
yeah,
And they're fine with that. They're just like, keep them out of the water. And I'm like, I can do that.
yeah.
But, I never knew whether or not that's something available in our town. I don't know.
Okay,
Yes, they do ride them over on Pistol Creek.
Yes.
And actually, people like to see the horses, especially if they've got little kids. Because I was like, what are we talking about 7 or something? Oh, I know, but they're pretty good about it.
We're stepping in.
all right.
Anyway,
And then we've got a couple more ideas here, and we've talked a lot about the potential role of easements, particularly as related to trails. But the town doesn't have extensive mapping of the easements that do exist. So that's something that probably should be a priority, is to map and catalog those open spaces and areas. And then following up on that, once you know what you have, where it's at, where those easements are, then the town might consider some strategic acquisitions to help piece together a network, whether it be an open space or trail network, basically. But it's hard to come up with a strategy for acquisition when you don't know what's already out there.
Yeah.
So those two are related.
I don't think you can do one until you have the other.
Right.
They just go hand in hand.
So it seems to be a pretty good idea that it's information you want to have. All right. So we're presenting all these ideas, like there's all this work to be done, but we're really coming off a tremendous amount of progress that's been made since 2013 POCD. And I'm not going to read it all here, but I've got 2 slides of basically accomplishments towards the open space and conservation recommendations that were made by the 2013 POCD. And that includes everything from farming provisions and zoning regs to the Chipkowski properties, to trail enhancements, additional sidewalks, activity through the land trust, signage, and I've got a second slide of it here. So there's been a tremendous amount of progress over that time, and I think the idea is maintain that progress over the next 10 years and build upon everything that's already been accomplished. Okay.
excellent.
All right, so that concludes our discussion on conservation and open space, unless you have any other comments or ideas or questions you'd like to cover this evening. And we're going to be coming back to these issues in the next several months, so this is the last chance to talk about it.
I think we pretty much covered everything that I thought we would. And I think we had some good feedback.
Good, yeah.
And we might have been a little crazy for them tonight, but hey, it's a holiday.
Guys,
Everyone wants
guys,
Speaking about conservation.
as a reminder, we have a draft online survey that's up. Maureen sent out the link for the survey, and that's an internal link. It's just for us. And we're very receptive to your feedback. You know, is there something we're not asking? Are we asking something in the wrong way? We like to be very careful not to be like presumptuous with our questions or leading with our questions. We don't want to push an agenda on people, but we need to be able to ask questions and put ideas out there to get some sort of feedback or dialogue.
There's one spot in there, you had the question.
Yeah.
And then you had a list of pick 5 items out of this thing of what you think is important.
Yep.
In town.
Yep.
Right. And then the next question says the same list. Right. What you think is not important.
Yeah.
Well, you pick the ones that were important in the first list, and the ones left over are not important.
So there's actually, I know
There's a psychology behind it.
Yeah.
Gotta be a problem.
So-
Yeah, there really is.
So that helps separate out what people are really oppositional to versus what they really support. So in the first question, we don't know if the stuff that wasn't identified as a priority was not identified as a priority just because people are like, but this stuff is important to me. But by asking you what is not a priority, we get people to say, no, this is really not, the town should not be, you know, it helps make sure we cover both.
And I don't understand
Both
why it's taking
extremes.
place.
Yeah. If there's something you're oppositional to, you'll be glad that second question's there. Because you get to really flag that, saying, no, this is not where we should be spending our resources.
Yeah, I did read that.
So before we launch, we're really interested in your feedback. And so as a reminder, if you, well, first of all, make sure you visit it and take it yourself, go through it. And if you could just, you know, have a pen and paper and mark anything that you think is maybe just, we're not asking it the right way, or maybe we left an option off, if it's a list of items, maybe we should have added something to it, or maybe there's a question we didn't ask at all that we should have asked. So we're very receptive to any input you have on that. We're happy to revise the survey accordingly. Okay. All right. And then finally, you know, we have a working vision statement, which isn't to say that we're done working on it. It is definitely a work in progress. And it's in the presentation. After this meeting, we'll send out a PDF of this presentation so that you have it. We've made some small changes to it since the package Maureen sent out. And you continue to give this some thought. And we want to get a statement that really captures everything that you think is important about Berlin, guides it over the next years. So our next steps are to really to launch this process with the public. We've been at it a couple of months now, but we really want to launch with the public. And we wanted to do that coinciding with launching the online survey. But we need to make sure the online survey is where we need it to be. Additionally, we want to start thinking about key stakeholders and groups that we should be reaching out to. That we do plan on doing some, as part of this process, some focus group meetings. And those meetings would basically be to assemble a dozen or so people in a room like this or this very room to have a, you know, hour and a half or so long conversation focused on an issue. Not unlike the discussion we had tonight, but expanding it out to some stakeholders in your community. So please continue to think about who should be in those meetings and you know, make some recommendations to us. We are continuing to coordinate with New England Geo on updating maps and producing new maps for the POCD. And we are currently working towards our December meeting, which in December, we will focus on cultural and historic resources in the community. Stephanie Dyer Carroll from my office, who's an architectural historian and cultural resource specialist, will play a similar role that Anthony played tonight in speaking to your historic resources and identifying what's really valuable in the community and where the opportunities are. And then I already talked about the fact that we're working towards the affordable housing plan. We'll update you on that as we go along.
Francisco, one thing. Go ahead, Chuck, for 1 second. Just going back to surveys made me think farms. So we have just brainstorming. We talked about the idea of surveying the 490 properties, and finding out what issues that they have. And again, that's something Diane and I had some dialogue, and so we're kicking it around as a way to get feedback from the property owners about what they think would be helpful.
I think they do have some specific ideas just from the meeting we had with the greenhouses. The people came there of the PLD sections out there, they did have some concerns that I think that they would have something to say about how we should treat it.
The only concern that I have is that people may not actually respond truthfully, because there are people engaged in activities that they shouldn't be. They've gotten away with operating businesses that never had approvals, and they're not going to want to call attention to themselves. So that's really my only concern with it. I think their feedback is definitely important. I just wonder how true.
Well, we're also trying to generate a farms. We're trying to categorize all those 490 properties and try to capture what we understand about what happens there. So we have a little opportunity for some independent investigation.
And that survey would be independent of our POCD survey, and it would be targeted to those property owners who are taxing the 490.
I was telling Diane, kind of on the sidebar, that if there's a way for some of these people we were talking about to have their anonymity, they would probably be more truthful. But that's a possibility.
Yeah, we've talked about the format of the survey, and I think we're interested in doing an online survey for that as well, with maybe the option of a mail-in hard copy for folks that weren't interested in doing something online. And we could think about that. I mean, part of the value is to find out exactly what property is and what kind of function.
Right.
That's a certain value, but
maybe it can always be done in 2 layers.
Yeah, it's a very good point that you make. Maybe there's one where we get at, and then another one that's separate that allows for some. We've got some time to figure that out. So thanks for offering that. Okay, so we've reorganized our topics just a little bit from what we presented to you last time, and it's really not going to affect us getting things done. It's just a matter of who has availability to get what kind of work done. So I already talked about our meeting next month. In January, we'll be focused on economic development, and Eric Halverson, who works for our sub-consultant RKG, who is helping us with both housing and economic development. He'll be presenting at that meeting. And then February, we will talk about housing and affordable housing, and that is going to line up pretty well with the schedule we have with the affordable housing plan. So one will inform the other. And then following that in March, we'll talk about facilities and infrastructure in April. And our next meeting is Monday, December 20th, and it's a little bit earlier. It's at 5:30 PM, so please make a note of that.
In my phone. Oh, my best. Year.
Yep.
Once I get it.
Okay, and we'll be, Maureen and I will be meeting in this room again with the Zoom option as well. I'll actually be participating in that one by Zoom. So,
Yeah, that'll be, this is the goal of this room, for this meeting. It allows for others to participate, but yet it's more of a roundtable.
yeah.
Situation.
It's worked pretty well for us. Yeah.
Did our normal public yet?
She might be on, she might be.
Yeah, we've got a couple of people. So-
There are a couple of,
So that concludes our meeting. Yeah, it's over. Yay, we accomplished so much.
No,
Yay.
but yay, but that's the way I feel. I feel it was a very good meeting. I think that we talked about a lot, and we brought a lot to fruition. So how are we gonna save all the butterflies and all the dragonflies? I better put up some bat houses or something. There are no bats.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
one last night. One is-
You saw
Did you?
one, I saw one this summer.
Yeah. that's-
Well,
From
that's
when they
like
moved into
seven.
town to now.
it starts with making
A
all
lot
that
less
open
this year.
space protection a priority. That's where it starts. Yeah.
I probably should put a bat, I put an owl house up.
All right, Maureen, anything you need to do to formally close out the meeting?
I think we need a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I got Diane
yeah,
and
we-
Sandy.
George, I'll give the second to. She needs to practice. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, so.
Aye.
All right, thank you, Steve.
Okay, thanks, Anthony. Appreciate it.
Have a good night, everybody.
All right, you too, happy Thanksgiving,
Bye.
everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, don't eat too much turkey.